January 4th, 2023 meeting of the Municipal Building Commission at 5:31 p.m. And for the record, Terry DeSisto, Jackie Romanicki, Jerry Freecut, Andrew Acosta, Jay Allard, and myself are here. That constitutes a quorum. First order of business, as always, is to approve the last minutes. We have the December 21st minutes. Is there any questions, comments, or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, I see we have a guest. I was unaware that we were doing anything on the COA feasibility study, but it looks like we have a guest who may want to talk about it. So David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And it's completely up to you. I'm here because I was advised that my presence was desired, so I'm happy to be here. And I can, review the work to date.
Yeah, why don't you?
Whatever would be helpful.
Why don't you review what you've been doing in the last month? And before you start that, Jeremy, do we have a new director yet?
Not yet.
When do we expect to have a director?
This month. It's only the 4th, right?
Okay.
We have completed, I believe we've completed assistant director interviews. So we are recruiting for a director. I don't have a timeline, but I can update the committee.
Okay, that's fine. So David, what have you been doing for the last month?
Very little, to be honest. Answering your question, we did all of the site stuff, and subsequent to that, we reviewed it with Jeremy, and we got a little more clarification on some of the sites, but we haven't done additional work pending clear direction on the sites. And what we did is, this is a very quick exercise, and we sent it to Jeremy, and I can review that with you. We pulled out from our previous work 3 floor plans at about 11,000, 13,000, and 17,000 square feet, which might be more or less the range of COA floor plans that you're looking for. And we can't go much further on that without programming. And at the last meeting, and this is, I see myself twice. I don't see anybody else, but that's fine. Maybe that's because I'm talking. Oh, there you go. I don't even want to see myself once, but in one of these backwards, but maybe that's just my screen. What we had talked about when we met a month ago was me and Abacus coming to Attleboro, and even if there wasn't a COA director on board, talking with the COA board, there was a suggestion that we review existing facilities, a guided tour, and the spaces that you use with the kind of overflow crowds, and I think it would be very useful. But the idea was that we would schedule a trip out there, and we're kind of relying on the
Okay,
city
so
of
you have not
to get personnel in place and a date.
Right.
So we are waiting for information from you as we see it.
Okay, let me give you a little update on sites.
Okay.
So one site that is a potential is the property that the YMCA owns on Pleasant Street.
Yeah.
It does not appear that they have a great interest in selling the actual health club that's over there, but there is a wooded area across the driveway that they might be willing to sell. In addition to that, there is a 30-acre parcel of land that surrounds it in a U-shape that is owned by a guy named Phil Schwachman, and that may potentially be available. Now, what would be exciting about that site is that it might allow us to locate a public safety building as well as a council on aging if we're able to acquire that. The problem we have right now is that we have an interim mayor, and we won't have a full mayor, if that's the right term. I don't know what to say, Jeremy, but
A mayor to fill the remainder of an unexpired term.
yes.
Just mayor. We'll have
A real mayor.
We'll have a mayor.
A mayor without acting in front of
Without
his name.
qualification.
Yeah, until perhaps March 10th. And we may not have a council on aging director until the 1st of February. So that puts us in a difficult position to determine whether we want to negotiate to acquire that land or not. And so I do intend to bring that up with the acting mayor at the earliest opportunity, but I'm not sure what he's going to say. The other site that is, I think we thought was potentially interesting was over at Highland Country Club, and there were two potential sites there. One was where the current clubhouse is, perhaps knocking it down and building something next to the parking lot. The other was building something down next to the high school contractors parking lot. But Article 97 may cause an issue there. So again, we need some direction from the powers that be as to whether that site would be available, either of those sites at Highland, for a council on aging or for a public safety building. So, David, I would say that thank you for showing up tonight, but I think that looking at the programs and looking at sizes of buildings, in my mind, is a little bit premature. And I think we need some direction on what sites are available and the input from the new director of the Council on Aging before we take this much farther. I'll throw it open to the commission members as to whether you have any additional thoughts.
What is involved in finding out the scenario on Highland Park?
Well, the city solicitor left and became the city solicitor in Somerville last week, and she has a successor who introduced himself to the council. So I think we need to schedule a time, Jeremy, with the mayor and the new city solicitor to discuss that issue, which may also involve bringing in Gary Erasian. It may involve bringing in Derek Corsi, but I think that there needs to be a briefing of the mayor, and then the acting mayor can tell us whether he believes he has the authority to do something or whether he thinks this is just going to have to wait till early March. But at least we could start the ball rolling with the solicitor as to the Article 97 issues. The concept I came up with was to say that since no one has declared it officially to be subject to Article 97, that we could record a deed restriction approved by the mayor and municipal council that would say, yes, we're subject to Article 97 except for the following things that we're carving out, one of which would be putting one or more municipal buildings there. Now, whether that would work legally or not, maybe, but I don't get paid to make those decisions, the city solicitor does, so I think we ought to get the solicitor's advice on that, whether that's an option.
You actually don't get paid at all, Jack. I said you don't get paid at all.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I like it that way.
So who would be in a position to contest that? Who would want to contest that?
10 taxpayers. So the reason I say that is that there is a case that came down in 2017, and if I'm a broken record, will somebody repeat this anyway, called Smith versus Westfield. And in that case, the town of Westfield wanted to build an elementary school in a portion of a park that had been a park for 60 years. Until that case came down, most lawyers believed that you had to do something affirmative to make yourself subject to Article 97. The case said, no, if it looks like a park and it quacks like a park, then it is a park. And so that means that you now look and you say, well, it says Highland Park on the sign, it says Highland Park on the city's website. The Parks Department maintains it. The park commissioners give permits for its use. It's referred to in the city budget as Highland Park. Those are all factors that might say it's subject to Article 97. On the other hand, it's only been a park for 4 years, not 60 years. We have not accepted any money that would make it subject to a park kind of use or a park kind of restriction. And we clearly have thought of carving something off because we carved off the 5-acre piece with a Form A plan before the planning board. So it's now a 88-acre piece and a 5-acre piece. So unless and until somebody, a judge, declared one way or another, we wouldn't know for sure. But
How
if
did we
we
get
were,
away with putting a parking lot out there then?
excuse me,
How did we get away with putting that parking lot out there that we put?
well, parks have parking lots.
I suppose.
What was the 5-acre parcel that was removed? I'm not familiar.
It wasn't removed, but at one point, the mayor had sent down to the council to rezone the current parking lot and clubhouse area.
Not the high school contractor parking lot, the
Yeah,
parking lot
that
on the
one.
northern side.
The traditional area there, next to the first tee. And that area was the subject of a Form A plan, which was approved by the planning board and recorded by the planning department. And the mayor wanted to sell that off to somebody to perhaps put a banquet hall there. That matter was then withdrawn before the city council. So the council never acted on that. So that is the legal status, is that the 93 acres are divided into 88 and 5. I don't think it makes much difference, but you could argue that it was always our intention at least to use those 5 acres for some other non-park use.
Oh, residential land, though.
And so that's why we need a legal opinion. And then a second phase of that is, can we get around that issue by recording our own restriction and saying, yes, it is a park, but
Tell.
we can still have a cross-country course named after Mark Coogan. We could still have a pavilion if we wanted to build one.
The other one.
We could still have a municipal building if we wanted to build one. You know, those sorts of things.
And
Yeah, but that was-
Article 97, I probably should know, but I'm not.
Article 97 of the state
One across
constitution says parkland can only be
building,
used for a
plus
park
there's a
unless
piece
there
of
is a
land
vote
dilution.
of 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate of Massachusetts that exempts it from that use.
Huh?
And getting a vote of 2/3 of any legislative body is not the easiest task.
Okay.
If you've been following what's going on in Congress, they can't even elect a speaker.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what about the TI piece?
Well, that's the other thing, is the question is.
I mean, obviously, we can't buy land if we don't have a mayor.
Yes, we can.
Well, that's.
We can.
We can.
The only thing
Right.
the acting mayor cannot do is hire or fire permanent staff, I
Oh.
believe.
But if we were to open negotiations and find out if Mr. Schwachman would be willing to sell, and if so, how much he wanted, then that would be, there would still end up having to be a way to pay for it sent by the mayor to the council, whether it be a bond issue or whatever. But, you know, if the acting mayor is willing to open negotiations, then I don't think we're hurt by finding out if he would sell it, and if so, for how much.
Right, so. I think that would be a perfect location for both.
I think it's a very intriguing location.
I'm glad I brought it up.
And then we should build a new library over there and move some
Gee, you're gonna have everything right around your corner.
I know.
I mean, if you've got 30 acres plus another 2 or 3.
Where is the 30 acres? Is it near,
If you look at, on Pleasant Street, look at the lot 6, which is the Y property, which is 5 acres,
yeah,
where the health club is.
yeah.
Lot 6A is a U shape around it that's 30 acres.
Oh, it's 30 acres around it?
Yes, so if we were to acquire 2 or 3 acres from the Y, we could assemble a 32-acre site. and 32 acres of undeveloped land is intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's easy access in and out of
Buildable
there.
or is it wet?
Uh,
I don't think there's any wetlands.
I have not looked at the wetlands issues.
GI.
Way in the
Just
back.
looked at the assessor's map and
Chris?
Google Earth.
Time lives on
And
Dorchester.
there may be some wetlands
Nineteen
there.
is the Y, and it's wet.
But, you know, again,
Wetland.
until we know that we should go out and do some negotiating, I didn't want to go too far down the road. So David, I think that was a long-winded way of saying thank you for appearing tonight.
At least they didn't drive. I do have to say that.
Yeah,
foggy.
and Jeremy, our next meeting is February 1st. So hopefully by February 1st, we'll have a new director, and we may have some direction on Highland or the old TI site. We will share that information with you as soon as we can. And if you want to come out and take a look at either of those sites, please arrange that through Jeremy. If I'm available, I might accompany you. If anybody else wants to go, they certainly can.
I mean, I think in terms of coming out, happy to do it, would probably make sense as to get some clarity. I mean, there are, I forget, like 11 or 12 sites that we looked at.
Yeah.
We did fairly detailed analyses, zeroed in on 3 or 4 that people wanted to consider. But those were on the table. Another thing we talked about was coming out and looking at existing facilities. So maybe what would make sense is to come out and look at all the site options that you would like us to continue looking at, and look at some of the facilities you use. And that might be a worthwhile afternoon. We get a lot of information, and that's kind of what we talked about at the last meeting, rather than look at 1 or 2 parcels that may or may not be available. So that's, I guess it's an offer, put us to good use, but if we can do it on programming and sites, that's good for everybody.
Okay, so we will keep you posted. And for the record, Ed Stanton has arrived, so he has now joined the table.
Okay,
So-
I'll put
so
February
we
3rd
will-
in my
First.
Facebook,
First.
and we'll see where we're at, right? That this same meeting will be on February 3rd, whether it makes sense for me to come, whether there's things for you to
February
tell me or me
1st.
to tell you.
David, February 1st, February 1.
February 1st, okay, got it. Okay,
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, David.
thank you very much.
Okay, Jeremy, do we want to move to the gym floors?
Yeah, certainly. Let me pull up the update that I got.
Ed, you had a chance to go see the Hyman Fine floor?
I did. Very, very interesting. I think the committee was right on the money in the action they took.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful looking floor, but when you turn the lights off and you can see the waviness.
I put a laser across it, and you can actually see it hitting, like, I took a picture of it.
Yeah,
So, at our last meeting, as you recall, Mark Sawatsky from Port and Arno Skalski from Socotec presented. We rescinded substantial completion for Hyman Fine and rescinded approval to pay requisition number 2. The city has not paid requisition number 2 to the contractor, FJ Roberts. And we were hopeful that we would have a larger update for this meeting 2 weeks later. So on the day after the meeting on the 21st, on the 22nd, Arno, our architect, sent the letter to the contractor, and we have not heard a response from the contractor. And the contractor had previously advised they would do some punch list items at Hill Roberts over the Christmas break. And to Mark Sawatsky's knowledge, our clerk of the works, they did not reach out to him to inspect any work. So whether that work was done and coordinated with the school department is unclear to us, but Mark was not on site and has not either observed the activities nor the results of them, if any of them did happen. So after Mark and I spoke this afternoon, he reached out to the contractor again to try to get an update. And then we jointly reached out to the architect, and the architect had not, as of 3 o'clock today, had not heard a response from the contractor either. So we don't have a schedule from the contractor as to when their A-team would be available, either February break or April break, and we don't have confirmation that their punch list items from the first school are completed or not. And perhaps unsurprisingly, we don't have a requisition to approve for the contractor either. So in the 2 weeks since our meeting on the 21st, not a lot of forward progress has been made.
And we did inquire of the school department, however, as to whether they wanted it done just right now, shut the gym down for a couple of weeks. And I think their answer was they would rather have it over a vacation. And if it can't be completely done over a vacation, but back to back with a vacation, right?
Correct. They were largely agnostic whether it was February break or April break, because as the floors present now, they're not ideal or within spec, but they seem to not provide any sort of safety hazard, right? It's undulations, but it's not cliffs. There's not sharp edges between seams or anything. It's rolling undulations. So the school department, my understanding is that they want FJ Roberts' quote-unquote A-team, and whenever they're available, but to either do February break or April break, correct? If it's a 2-week shutdown, to have one of those weeks correspond with a school vacation week.
Any questions? On our agenda, it says change order 3 for Port.
Yeah, so consistent with change orders 1 and 2, this having to redo the one floor, having to rip it out and reinstall, is going to require additional oversight from the clerk of the works. So he submitted a $10,000 change order, and consistent with his first 2 change orders, will only bill for hours actually worked. He has not exhausted change order 2, but with the anticipated work for the remediative work, he will exhaust change order 2.
So therefore, are you suggesting that we enter into change order number 3 in an amount not to exceed $10,000?
Yes, I am.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Jerry?
How are we contracted with him right now, for a lump sum or by the hour?
We are
By the
contract.
hour.
By the hour?
Yeah, it's kind of a both and. It's a lump sum contract that he bills at a prescribed rate per hour. So if he doesn't work those hours, as you saw with the fire department roofs, we came in, we had a lump sum contract with him that he billed us per hour. We didn't get to the anticipated hours. We had a savings, so he didn't bill those additional hours. So it's lump sum in its nature and saying $10,000, but he bills us for actual hours worked.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I think we're now moving on to the building inventory study.
Yeah, so we sent a request to council for $185,000 from free cash to fulfill the mandate in the amended ordinance that this body conduct an annual survey of the physical repair of municipal buildings.
With a view towards rolling that into the city's capital improvement plan and being able to give an informed look ahead as to what things will need to be done to the buildings that we have so that we can keep them in good order and repair.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had meetings with City Planner Gary Arazian about this as well, that this is, not a stand-in by any stretch of the imagination for the capital improvements plan. It's refining a particular nature of it. And also it's, in the ordinance. So I said this in a meeting earlier today that of all the RFPs we've written in the city, none of them have been 100% original. We can take things from other municipalities, and there's state level procurement requirements that we don't need to invent on our own, or language around it on our own. So we're taking together a few different RFPs from different communities that apply to something like this, and then inserting our own scope. So at a brief meeting earlier this week, I have another one on Friday about developing an RFP for this. So the charge in the ordinance is to submit a report in January. We're not going to have a report in January of 2023. The ordinance was just passed in fall of 2022, and we just got the money. So my anticipation would be something like a, give or take, 9-month study, a 7 to 9 month study. So we get somebody on board in the next few months. We issue the RFP, execute the contract, and do the study throughout calendar year 23, and then are able to present the study as per the ordinance to municipal council in January of 2024.
And when are we projecting to put this on the street, and when are we projecting to be interviewing?
I think we could probably have it on the street either probably the end of January, get responses in the middle of February, and then interview folks in March, have a contract in April, and have something to present in January.
Which would then give us 6 to 9 months before the January deadline.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Attleboro Pawtucket Interconnect.
Yeah, so we've had we, as in the city's finance team, so to provide kind of a brief, we went out to bid, didn't have enough funding within the fund for the sole bid that we received. Matt Pitta from CDM Smith came and presented to this body, suggested a bifurcated procurement approach where the city procures the widget on its own and then procures the installation on its own. We kind of puzzled through that a little bit. We of the city finance team, of the treasurer, the auditor, myself, and the water superintendent. Brought back in Matt Pitta from CDM Smith and the perceived cost saving, or the projected cost savings in doing this bifurcated approach where we buy it on our own and then procure the installation afterwards. That cost savings wasn't great enough to mitigate the risks inherent with that sort of approach. So things like
That we would own a device but have no one to install it.
Correct. The lead time on the procurement, the transportation, the mobilization of the contractor on both ends, right? If we procure the device and get it before the contractor mobilizes, we're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of this building. And if the opposite happens, if the building procurement is delayed, the contractor is now mobilized and doesn't have any work to do. And then there was an issue with potential misalignment, right? These are, you have some play in being able to tie into water mains, but where you come up out of the ground and where you put the building down on it, it's not a huge site. And we are concerned that our ability to write enforceable bid specifications about who owns misalignment and every other problem related to that, all those perceived cost savings going through this bifurcated procurement.
That's the old thing about starting the bridge from either side and hoping it meets at the middle.
Exactly. The cost savings were small enough that we thought the risks would evaporate that savings pretty quickly. So we're working with CDM Smith right now to sharpen the pencil, to look at current market conditions and refine what we think is a realistic number to bid this as one package, similar to how we did before, or almost exactly how we did before. But that bid was so long ago that we didn't have the funding to execute it at the time, and it's no longer valid, so we have to go through the bidding process again. We are also in the process, we internally, the finance team, of looking at current capital projects that have been borrowed and that we have additional funds in, that we do this exercise probably twice a year, but that we can close out current capital projects into new funds with similar useful economic life. So even if it's small amounts relative to the overall budget, it reduces the amount that would need to be additionally borrowed. So we're looking at, probably about $2 million additional in an authorization. And we're working to sharpen pencil now. And then once we have that number, that's going immediately to bond counsel for their review to get a loan authorization. So once we're comfortable with the specifics, we'll be moving forward with additional authorization and going out to bid again.
When are we looking at sending down to the council then for the bond authorization?
The most optimistic approach would have been the first communication in February, which I believe is the 7th. More realistically, probably the 21st.
So a public hearing in March and a vote in April maybe?
Correct.
And then what are we looking at, 18 months?
For a lead time. Yeah, it's like 16 months. Yeah.
Well, 2 months or so to, get it bid and accepted, and then another 16 to build it, so we're looking at,
Summer 2024, fall 2024.
yeah, summer to fall of 2024. Okay. Let's hope it keeps raining.
Is the amount that we're requesting changing?
Boy.
I would imagine there's been some cost escalation.
Yeah, and that's why I assume there's gonna be escalation just due to inflation or anything like that,
Yeah.
but
So
if we were asking for 2 million previously, example, are we asking
Well, didn't
2.2 now.
something?
Yeah.
the bid come in at 3 point something?
I forget now, but I think it was 3.1 when we had a budget of 1.8.
Yeah.
So we need, 1.4, even if that number was good. Between escalation, added contingency, my preference is always to ask for a reasonable amount more than is conceivably needed. This will be our second bite at the apple in this project, and I don't want to be in the position of needing a third. So the contingency will hopefully be large enough that it won't need to be fully utilized. So the way capital projects are funded, we get the loan authorization from municipal council, and once we have that loan authorization, we can go and spend that money. We have the budgetary authority to spend that money. It's in the purview of the city treasurer to actually have that money. We don't. Even if we sign a $3 million contract, it's not like we're in the markets borrowing $3 million that afternoon. That cash flow is within the purview of the city treasurer. So if we get an authorization for $2 million and only need 1.7, we would only borrow the 1.7.
And we always look better if we come in under than over.
That's the goal.
Now, can we give the contractor more time this time around so we get a better group of bidders?
Well, we're gonna absolutely have to, right? I mean, we're gonna have to have the spec give them some period of time, whether it's 16, 18 months, right, to get the job done?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of danger of giving too tight a timeline where contractors thought I couldn't get it done. I think Matt expressed this to you. If it was too tight, they didn't think they can get it done in time, and if it was too long, they didn't want to take the downside pricing risk of being in a 2-year-long procurement process. So I think it's a needle we have to thread and have to rely on our consultants who do this regularly. I don't have a perfect answer on the time frame we should be giving. I rely on our engineer for that.
What about if we, just a stray thought here, if we authorized it and said you will, within 30 days order the plant, but then your installation is X number of days after you receive it, to try to give the contractor comfort that they know how many days they have after the plant comes in, rather than wondering, is it going to be 14 months, is it going to be 16 months, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's interesting in that, let them control the controllable rather than try to have them control the uncontrollable. Yeah, it's a good thought.
Okay. Anything else on this project?
That's it. Once we get a refined number from CDM Smith, we should move pretty quickly on our administrative end.
Okay.
Relatively quickly on our administrative end.
So should we pay the bills?
Please.
So we have a bill for the gym floors from Port Consulting for $2,362.50. Excuse me, from Socotec for $32,443.48. And Jeremy, those are both fine?
Yes, they are. So that's, Socotec is charging their first change order to the city, and then Port is charging their second change order.
Okay. And then for the feasibility study for the initial services, KBA is billed $29,200.
Yeah, this is actually their second invoice on the project. They're doing an invoicing method dissimilar from Port Consulting, which is I get on the Port invoice, I get on this day I did this for half an hour, for 3/4 of an hour, for an hour and a half, and he bills by the hour. The way the contract was executed with KBA, it's just a lump sum contract. So whether they spend 1,000,000 hours or 1,000 hours, they bill us the same amount. So they are giving
So
us
it's by a milestone then?
correct.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve those three bills?
Move to approve. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So, is there anything else we need to discuss, or have we done enough damage for one night, gentlemen?
That's all I have.
Okay, then a motion is in order to adjourn at 6:07.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.